So it seems that we can start. Dear colleagues, dear participants, good morning and good day to all of you. On behalf of the CBGSP, I welcome you to this webinar on tracking NDC mitigation commitments under the Enhanced Transparency Framework. My name is Slađana Bundalo, and I am a network coordinator of Eurasia. So I will moderate this event today with support my colleague Sheila from Network of Anglophone Africa. And just to note that today's event is joint event of two CBGSP networks, Eurasia and Anglophone Africa. So I welcome you all and hope that we will have a productive webinar today. I'm also glad for having here my colleagues from UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, Fernando and Ketsive, that will present and speak today on these methodologies and ways of tracking NDC mitigations, commitments, and CTFs. So, as we all know, the NDCs are in the core of the Paris Agreement and play a key role in achievement of its long-term objectives. So under the ETF, tracking of NDC, as you all know, is mandatory, so that involves providing transparent and comprehensive information on the implementation and progress of NDC. It includes both quantitative data, current and projected emissions, for example, and also qualitative insights to better understand the NDC targets and their effects. So that's one of the reasons why it is actually the main challenge for developing countries that are actually preparing their BTRs. The primary objective of this workshop is actually to assist your country teams responsible for reporting national determined contributions, or NDCs, and to enhance the technical understanding of the goals, principles, and actions related to NDC tracking and reporting processes. Also, in that sense, the objective of the CBGSP is to provide you with support and capacity building at the national, regional, and global level to assist all developing countries in responding to reporting provisions under UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement's Enhanced Transparency Framework, and ultimately increase ambition for climate action. We really, in our team, we truly hope that with new and enhanced knowledge and practical skills on NDC tracking, the countries will be able to prepare qualitative reports and to progress in submitting their first BTRs by the end of this year. So I just, at the end, would like to thank you all for participating, for your readiness to be part of this and other CBGSP trainings. And I really wish you a very good and productive learning process ahead. So as for today's meeting, just to say that as per our agenda, we will talk about BTR as a tool for reporting, mitigation, tracking in accordance with the ETF provisions. Then we will focus on information you need to track progress in implementing and achieving the NDC using the common tabular formats, or CTFs. And we will, in that sense, speak about a description of parties and NDCs and tables 1, 2, 4, and 5 CTF tables. Also, just to know that you will have we all will have enough time to ask questions. We all understand that reporting of NDC is a big challenge for all developing countries, and we have received a lot of inquiries for organizing more events and webinars, learning sessions in that context, and that's why actually we are invited our colleagues, experts, to share the information with you. So just at the beginning, also, I would like to ask you kindly to turn on your cameras to make a joint photo with all of you. So please turn on your cameras for a few seconds. Thank you. Thank you very much. I see some also familiar faces. Okay. I'll make one screenshot now. Okay, and one more. Thank you very much. So our first speaker, my colleague Kasive. I kindly ask Kasive to introduce herself and to start with the presentation. Kasive, the floor is yours. You can share your presentation. Also, just one more issue. There is a registration link we shared with you within this invitation email. So please kindly register yourself for this event. Thank you. Thank you very much. Kasive, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Slajana, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ketsiwe Kumalo. I'm working here at the Copenhagen Climate Center, UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, and today I'll be sharing with you, I think, some concepts with regards to tracking progress of the implementation of the NDC. And we are going to look in terms of what are the requirements of this under the enhanced transparency framework. So I'm trying to share my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen, Slajana.
Yes, we can see.
In presentation mode?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I think, as you know, colleagues, from the mandate of the Paris Agreement, as already mentioned by Slanjana in her introductory part, that parties under Article 13.7, they have to provide regular information which is necessary to track progress on implementing and achieving their national determined contributions, which is under Article 4 of the Paris Agreement. And we know also that Article 13 basically provide how this information should be tracked. And we know that parties have worked throughout the years after the adoption of the Paris Agreement and came up with modalities, procedures, and guidelines which help countries to track progress of their NDCs. And this is facilitated under Decision 18 CMA1. And if we look at those MPGs from paragraph 59 to 102, this actually outline all the necessary information that countries need to report on under the topic on
Right.
tracking progress. So we are going to look
Yes.
at how then this BTR come into place. And I think, as you all
All
know,
right. It's
that
fine. Do you wanna?
the process to track progress, we use the BTR, which is the Biannual Transparency Report, as the main reporting vehicle under the Enhanced Transparency Framework. And through the MPGs, there are key critical information, or I will call it thematic areas, that parties have to take into consideration in terms of what they are reporting in the BTR. So the first area is the National Inventory Report, and this is a mandatory part of the BTR. And the second part is progress made in implementing and achieving the NDC. And this is what we are going to dwell on today, and also to mention that this is also a mandatory part of the BTR. And thirdly, parties can also report on climate change impacts and adaptation. And as you can see, this is optional and not mandatory under the BTR based on the MPGs. And the other element is financial technology transfer, capacity building support needed and received. And here we have got elements that are mandatory for reporting by developed countries or Annex 1 countries. And there are also elements that are referring to developing countries, which in this case is also not very mandatory. And I want us to actually, as we go through the section, to understand, and I know that in your different respective countries, you have already started to work in preparation of your BTR, and to emphasize that if you look at these 5, or I will call 4 elements, because the other element, which is for developed countries, may not really be relevant to us. These 4 elements, 2 of these elements are mandatory. So the GHG inventory report and progress made in implementing and achieving your NDC. So why and what is the purpose? Why are we bothering with this reporting? I think, as you know, in the architecture of the Paris Agreement, countries have to communicate their NDCs. And once you communicate your NDC, you have to implement the NDC. And in the process of implementing the NDC, every 2 years, you have to track progress in terms of how far you are in implementing or in achieving the targets of your NDC. And this is submitted or is communicated through the BTR. And once the BTR have been communicated to the UNFCCC, they undergo a technical expert review process and facilitated multilateral process where countries get an opportunity to actually understand their gaps, and also an opportunity to learn from other countries. And once this has been done, what is very important to note is that in the architecture of the Paris Agreement, the inbuilt ambition is that these BTRs that we submit, together with the outputs of the tier, it actually informs the global stocktake, which is actually a process that allows parties to look in a collective manner how far they are achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement. And this is done every 5 years and already started in 2023. And then with this output of the global stocktake, it is important that countries then understand what is working based on the process of their BTR and also the outcomes of the review to inform the next NDCs. And this is very important to mention, because I also understand that this is a process that is currently in parallel with your preparation of your BTR, and the next NDCs are due already next year. And it's very important, as you are working on these 2 processes, to understand how the outcomes of the BTR inform the next update of the NDC. We know we already have output of the global stocktake from COP28, and it is very important to take that into consideration and also look at how far you are progressing and use that information to enhance ambition in your next NDC. And this ambition is expected at national level in terms of per country, but also at a collective or at a global scale. This is actually very important. And then the cycle continues every 5 years. So this is just to put into context how important the BTRs that we are preparing are in the process of enhancing ambition or also in updating our NDC. So what is expected to be in the BTR? So here I have information which is taken from Decision 5, CMA 3, which is actually operationalizing the MPGs. And this is the outline that was negotiated of what the BTR should look like. So if you look here, you can see several elements. Some I have already highlighted in the first slide when I was showing the BTR. But today we are going to zoom in the information necessary to track progress, how the BTR becomes a tool of informing progress in terms of achieving the national mitigation action, but also the global mitigation action. So based on the MPGs, these are the key elements that are very important on outlining progress in the BTR. So the first element is the national circumstance and institutional arrangement, and then the description of the NDC, putting into context what the information that you are going to have on tracking progress, and also the information that is necessary to track progress, and then your milestones that you are using to achieve the target, which is the mitigation policies, actions, and measures. And also, very importantly, the greenhouse gas inventory, emissions and removals, and projections of GHG emissions and removals. So we are going to get into detail of what the MPGs require in these areas. So very importantly, national circumstances and institutional arrangements, we know that this is very important to facilitate sustainability over time of the collecting of information that is necessary to be in the BTR. So here we outline how the national circumstances affect greenhouse gas emissions and removals over time at national level, but also very importantly, information that is relevant in terms of institutional arrangement, how you are tracking, how institutionally are you arranged, what policies you have in place, what coordination mechanisms you have in place that support you in tracking progress. And most importantly, also, I think some of the very critical elements is that I know many countries are working on these MLV systems and tools, and how countries are engaging with stakeholders, as we understand that the implementation of the NDC is not only with one entity, but many diverse entities at national, provincial, federal, and county level. So most importantly, the second part is that you also have to describe the NDC as you have submitted it in terms of what is the target, and also what is the year. Is it a single year target? Is it a multi-year target? And what is the reference point and your base year, your starting point? These are very important to understand. And also, what is the time frame of the implementation? And we know that time frame was also one of the negotiated items in terms of how long should we implement the NDC for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And we know that now we have a harmonized time frame, because as we move towards assessment, it's very important for us to have this information collectively and understand how we are progressing. And once you have described, give a description of your NDC, much more importantly is also to understand how are you tracking progress. what indicators you are using to track progress. And the MPGs spell out that it is very important that we identify relevant indicators for tracking progress. And this could be qualitative or quantitative indicators, depending on what type of target you have. Of course, this will inform the type of indicator that you should have. And I must say that the indicator should be something that you should be able to track, and you should also understand what was the indicator at during the baseline or your reference level. So also very important, and we want to know what is the starting year of tracking your indicator. So it's always very important to provide this information. And what is also very significantly important is to understand what assumptions you are using, what methodologies you are using, what parameters, what data sources you are using in tracking progress or in identifying this indicator. Are you using the IPCC guidelines? This is spelled out clearly in the MPGs. These are some of the methodologies and the metrics that needs to be used. And also, if you have categories beyond the categories described in the IPCC guidelines, you need to provide this information. And as I've already mentioned, that you need to ensure that also as you are describing your methodologies, you are very clear in terms of how you are avoiding double counting of net GHG emissions, because there's quite a lot of activities happening in the country, and we are going to see this just shortly, because many countries, they know that now they can use cooperative approaches to achieve their NDCs, or they can sell ITMOs for other countries to achieve their NDC. So the MPGs are very clear in terms of how countries should do this, and there's a really elaborate guidance both under Article 13 within the transparency discussion, but also under Article 6 guidance that is providing parties in terms of how these could be done. And very importantly also is that parties are required to report on any adaptation mitigation core benefits, which may be coming from economic diversification and also response measures. So this is one of the key elements, and we know that this is very important to many countries where their NDCs have actions that are really response measures, which are trying to diversify their economy as a way of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So this basically is summarized in terms of what this information look like, in terms of how you should structure the information that is necessary to track progress. And so most importantly, you need to have your indicator. And this picture is already giving us information where you can get details of this, and also the definition of your indicator, methodologies and approaches, and then you have to identify how far you are in terms of the implementation. In practical terms, how far you have achieved the targets of your NDC. The next important element is the mitigation policies, measures, actions, and plan. These are very, very important, because when you have your target, how you meet your target, countries put in place policies, you put in place programs and projects that are intended to implement the NDC. And the guidelines, the MPGs are calling that as you report, you need to organize this information in terms of outlining clearly what is the name of this mitigation policy or measure or plan that you have in place. And you have to describe this and give objectives of this policy or measure, and what type of instrument it is. Is it regulatory? Is it economic? Is it a standard? And also at what stage you are at in terms of implementing this. Has it been adopted, implemented, and what sectors are affected, which gases are affected, when did you start to implement this, and who, in terms of the implementing entity at national level, is implementing this information. And each party shall provide this information in terms of understanding what are the expected greenhouse gas emissions that are expected from this action, and also what methodologies and assumptions are used. And I want to highlight here that parties that in light of their capacities have flexibility here to actually, as they are encouraged to estimate the expected and achieve GHG emissions. If you have the capacity, you have to mention here what is the expected GHG emissions, but you can decide to apply flexibility. And I'm going to end my presentation with these key flexibilities that are embedded in the MPGs for tracking progress. And this is basically showing you in a kind of tabular format what is mandatory. Where we have a shall, obviously we know that this is mandatory. So these are the elements that are mandatory in this section of mitigation policies and measures. And also in the far right, I have information where parties may provide information. You can provide information if it is available, what is the cost of the measure, and also what are the non-GHG mitigation benefits of the measure, and how this mitigation action interact with each other as appropriate. And the other important element is parties are expected to also submit a summary of the greenhouse gas emissions and removals. And the MPGs states that each party shall must submit, if that submit a standalone national inventory, shall provide a summary of its GHG emission and removals, and this information shall be provided for those reporting years corresponding to the party's most recent national GHG inventory. So as we know that this tracking of progress is not just happening in a vacuum, as I already mentioned, that these are your milestones you are using to track progress. So it is definitely linked to the whole process of your GHG emissions. So in this chapter, it's very important to provide a summary of your GHG so that you are able to actually see how far you have gone in achieving your target. As we know that many of the indicators of the NDCs are actually just the greenhouse gas emissions and removals. Also important element is the projection of these greenhouse gas emissions and removals. And the MPG mentioned that each party shall report these projections, and also this has to be done in a way that you provide the different scenarios of your projections. So you have 3 important scenarios that are already spelled out in the MPGs. The scenario with measures, where you are providing the projections based on all the measures that you are already implementing, adopted, that are already adopted in your country, and also have a scenario with additional measures, which actually include those that you have included in the first scenario with measures, but also add additional measures. For instance, measures that you plan to implement. It may be short-term or medium-term. Some could be already in the pipeline, but it's not well decided. For example, if you have projects that you have designed but have not been approved, you don't have finance yet, and this you can include under this scenario with additional measures. And then you can also have a scenario that is basically providing business as usual, which doesn't have the measures that you intend to implement to achieve your NDC. And I want to mention that projections are actually very important, because also they give us a picture in terms of achieving your NDC, especially for those NDCs that are actually a business as usual scenario with informed by projections in the first place. So this becomes very important to actually have this element, and also to mention that also countries in this case have flexibility in how they do projections. And I'm going to mention this later on. So what is also important is that as you provide this information on your different projection scenarios, what is also important is that you also provide the projections of your indicators, the key indicators that are very important to identify progress towards the achievement of your NDC, and also provide information on the assumptions that are driving your projections, and that is equally very important. And this information is presented in a graphic or tabular format. And we see this is really a simplified a graph that is showing how projections work. And if you can see, the solid line is providing actual emissions, and then the dotted lines are providing the different scenarios in terms of those with measures, with additional measures, and without measures. So this is the graph that is very important in terms of reporting projections, because it clearly states, you can see the gap between what is the effect if you implement the mitigation actions that you would have identified, and also what will be the impact if you add more additional measures in the process. So this is a key important information, basically just reminding us and highlighting the key flexibility provisions that are in the MPGs in the context of tracking progress. So we know that we have flexibility in how we actually report on expected and achieved GHG emission reduction for each action or policy that we would have included. And also we have flexibility under projections. So you have to go to the specific paragraphs, as I have included here in this table. In the middle, you see the specific paragraph in the MPG that developing countries that need flexibility in light of their capacities are encouraged to report projections. And it is not really also mandatory requirement. And flexibility also in this case you can maybe have the capacity to do these projections, but maybe data is not allowing, so you can apply flexibility in terms of how long your projections will be. So there is a specific flexibility that is speaking to that. And also there is also flexibility in terms of how you report on the methodology and coverage of your projections. So it is very important to actually note and understand which of these flexibility you are going to apply as you do your projections. So you have flexibility overall in terms of doing these projections, but if your NDC is based really on a business as usual scenarios, it's very important that you provide the projections, because this is the basis of your NDC in the first place. And then if you have capacities, you don't have capacities, or you don't have the specific data to go beyond, or whatever tools or methodologies that you are using does not allow you to have the least years as expected, here is 15 years, then you can have this projection at least to the end of the implementation period of your NDC. So this is basically in terms of how you apply this in specific terms. So I will end it here, Slajana, and thank you everyone for your attention. And we are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ketsiwe. This was really, I'm congratulating to you, because you have summarized all these MPGs within this short presentation. So I think that participants have got the really brief and summarized information about the overview of the BTR in the context of the NDC reporting, tracking and reporting, and also about the tracking indicators, how to describe methodologies, also about adaptation, mitigation co-benefits, mitigation policies, measures and plans, mandatory and non-mandatory information, also about summary of the GHG emissions and removals, but also about projections, GHG emission projections, and projections of removals, which is actually I would say, the main goal of implementing of the NDC is to reduce emissions. Also, you noted and talked about the flexibilities and how to which of them to use and how to apply them. So I think that this is one great overview for the countries, for all of us, on the how to report on track and report of NDC. We have some questions also in the chat box, but prior to that, since it's now our question and answer time, please, if you have some questions, raise your hand and unmute your microphone and ask Ketsiwe if you have. Otherwise, if there is no questions, I will read the questions from the chat box. So one question is related to, Lial Kumar from Mauritius is asking you, Ketsiwe, can we use the 2016 National Inventory Report for the purpose of the BTR?
Thank you, Slajana, for that question. I think this is, we follow the guidance, as I mentioned, that the guidance that we are following in preparing this BTR is the modalities procedures. So they are very clear in terms of the years that are relevant for parties to include in the national inventory report. It is expected that, for example, if we are submitting this in December of 2024, the latest inventory will be 2022. So you will need to update your inventory of 2016 to actually reflect the guidance on the MPGs. So that is also very important. And depending if you were using already the IPCC 2006 guidelines, so if that is the case, you have to just update the remaining years up to 2022.
Thank you, Ketsiwe. Thank you for your answer, Lial. I hope that we have answered the question. Next one is from Angela from Serbia. Does the BTR include description of sectors in separate chapters, similar to national communications and BUR's format?
Basically, this can be done, I think, in different elements of the BTR. So you can have the description of sectors in your national communication, depending on how these sectors are important for the implementation and tracking progress of your NDC. And also, these sectors can be explained, I think, accordingly in the national inventory report of your BTR. And you can also organize your mitigation policies, plans and action according to the sectors in the chapter of NDC tracking progress. So this is how you can actually reflect the different sectors across the different elements of the BTR.
Thank you very much. And one more question from the chat box. In the BTR, each chapter will have its own national circumstances and institutional arrangements. Is that the case?
Yes, based on the MPGs, these are very important elements. Then there's a reason why this you have to have in each of the different chapters of the BTR, because the idea behind is for countries to start thinking how you can put in place sustainable institutional arrangements that helps you to report, to meet the frequency of reporting. So every 2 years. And here, instead of being very general, you have to be specific in terms of when it comes to mitigation. And this is how our key sectors for mitigation are organized, and this is how we are coordinating, and these are the key policies or legislations that are actually guiding us in terms of institutional arrangements. So very important, because those key elements can actually help you or undermine your efforts in achieving your NDC. And as you actually present your BTR each year, you will see also that you will also check to understand what are the key weaknesses of your national institutional arrangement, and you improve also over time. And it's very important to outline, as we know that in many countries, for instances, right now, there are many challenges that different countries are faced with, and if there are really key issues that are affecting the country to implement the NDC, this is the space where you provide that information. This can be information that is totally outside the climate area, could be geopolitical issues, it could be really different national circumstances that are actually now impeding the country to implement or achieve the NDC. So in each element, it's very important to outline this, and that is why it's very important for countries to start thinking long-term when it comes to institutional arrangement. What will work for them to help them meet the frequency of reporting?
Thank you very much, Ketsiwe. Colleagues, thank you for asking questions. You can continue asking questions and putting your questions in the chat box. I see, maybe to answer just one more question now, again from Lial Kumar from Mauritius. If we use 2022 latest inventory, this converts to the 2019 and 2020 COVID pandemics.
Definitely.
Okay. So thank you, Ketsiwe. Thank you very much.
I think it's very important to mention that, and also if there were any situation that happened that makes this data not available because of the COVID pandemic, I think you have to mention this challenges that you might have, maybe data gaps somewhere because of whatever happened during the pandemic. But it is true that it will have to definitely cover these years.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, you can continue asking questions in the chat box. And now in the following 20 minutes, we will talk, I invite our colleague Fernando that will provide you information on how to track progress in implementing and achieving NDC using the CTFs or common tabular formats. He will speak a bit more about NDC definitions, methods, and about the CTF tables. Fernando, please introduce yourself shortly, and the floor is yours for the presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Slayana and Sheila, for this invitation to present in this webinar. Regards from Copenhagen, because myself and my colleague Ketsiwe work at the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center in topics of climate transparency. So this is like an introduction for the two of us. And well, but we don't have much time, so I will move into the presentation. And the idea is to have some practical examples, and you can see some real information that can serve as an inspiration for the production of your own BTRs. Particularly in this case, we are looking at the common tabular formats, or the CTF, that are related with the NDC tracking. And according to the Paris Agreement and the MPGs, or the modalities, procedures, and guidelines that my colleague Ketsiwe explained you in the previous presentation, The way to track the NDC targets or commitments made by countries under the Paris Agreement is through indicators. Indicators that must comply with a number of requirements. There was a long discussion as a part of the UNFCCC COPs in order to achieve a clear mandate on how to do this NDC tracking. Because I would say that the whole idea of the Paris Agreement is that the countries need not only to make to present NDC targets, but also to measure them and to see how far or how close are them of implementing. And the way is through indicators. Indicators will serve them to see if we are complying with our commitments. And in this slide, I present a simple process of 4 steps by which we can use indicators. First, we need to identify the indicators and give a number of information associated to the indicators in the step 2 and 3, and then we will be in a position to apply these indicators into the NDC targets. The way that I'm showing it, I'm concentrating today, is in using the common tabular formats. And the reason is very simple. The common tabular formats is the best and the way to report all the information from the MPG. So if we want to include all the elements of the MPGs and get the checks of all the contents of the MPGs, then if we fill the common tabular formats, we will be on the safe side of information. As my colleague Ketsi explained, this is part of a decision. This is a document that probably is very familiar to most of you, and that in the case of mitigation comprises these 12 tables. I will concentrate in the first group of tables that are more related with indicators. But indicators, as we know, depends on what are the NDC targets. No, so I will say that it's a bit strange, but the way to start thinking on the common tabular format is from the end to the beginning, and the end is the appendix where we can put where we can fill the description of the NDC and what are the targets that we want to fulfill. And once we have identified in the appendix the target, we can present a number of indicators according to the type of target that countries have included into their NDC. The structure summary is in a total of 4 tables. I will concentrate in the first 2 tables plus the appendix in this occasion, but my colleague Ketsiwe will guide you through the other elements of this common tabular format. I would say that if we go first to the description of the NDC target, to fill the information included in the appendix with information such as the type of target, the year we are estimating to fulfill the target, some reference, the scope, the time frame, if the target is a conditional or unconditional target, if we want to use new definitions that we didn't present before as a part of the NDC or as a part of a previous BUR. All these elements must be included in the appendix. I will show you now an example of a country that already started to fill the appendix. This was made by the own country, in this case was made by Tunisia. So it's a real example. They include this information into a previous BUR, and Tunisia used the last BUR as a way to make a movement from BURs to BTRs, and they define a number of the elements like the type of target or what was the time frame or what sectors of the national GHG inventory were considering. All these elements are part of the filling this appendix of the common tabular format. I think that it's important also to note that different from all the other 12 tables that are a shall requirement, or it means that they, according, if we want to fulfill the MPGs, we should fill all of them. In the case of the appendix, there is a caveat saying that it's voluntary to use this format. But the good thing of using the format is that we will be sure that all the elements of the MPGs are covered if we use the format. Okay, but if countries want to put more elements, like as a part of the appendix, is not the problem. The problem is they put less. No? If they put less, they are not necessarily complying with the MPGs and with the requirements for the NDC tracking. Okay. If we move to other table, which is the common tabular format associated to indicators. For table 1, we need to present the indicator, okay? And when we are saying presenting the indicator, we want to give a name, we want to give some numerical information. We usually we think in numerical indicators, but it will not be always the case, as we will see again. But in general, we'll have to find like a reference level, a year for the indicator, when we are starting to measure the indicator, and when is the last year of assessment of the indicator, the relation to the NDC. All these elements will be part of what is called table 1. But I would like to speak a bit more on indicators before moving away from table 1. And I just want to say that when we are talking of indicators, we usually have in mind a number. No, we think that in GHG emissions, we think in the progress in terms of a number of hectares of forest.
Fernando, we cannot hear you. Yes, now we can hear you, but we lost you, I think, from when you were trying to describe. Maybe you could just start afresh on this presentation.
Start from?
From here.
From progress indicators?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. What I was saying is that in the case of commitments presented by countries, most of the commitments are quantitative commitments, and they are more related with GHG emissions, for instance, or with percentage of hectares that are planted or conserved as a part of a forestry policy. But we can also use indicators to assess non-quantitative actions. For example, in the case of the NDC of Chile, they put as a commitment to create a group to deal with Article 6 implementation at the national level. And with indicators, you can also state the degree of how far are you advancing with these commitments. This was my main point in this slide of progress indicators. If you want to find a good publication with climate indicators, I will recommend you this report from the Economic and Social Council of United Nations that defined more than 150 indicators to report climate change, and they cover not only GHG emissions but also vulnerability and adaptation indicators, other types of mitigation indicators, or also climate, direct climate indicators. So maybe if you are looking for like a source of indicators that can be well defined and have like a good explanation behind, you can have a look at this report for inspiration. For instance, in the case of total greenhouse gas emissions, they define these different types of indicators. The good thing is that they are defined not only by the name, but they have other elements that will be useful to have a very clear definition of the indicators and can be used. I mean, if you use the same, if every country uses like their own definition of indicators, it will be more complicated to compare. But if countries start to use a more like a similar definition, I think in the long run it will be better for like have a more uniform description of the advances in terms of, for instance, in terms of GHG emissions. So again, it's not mandatory to use this, but from my experience, I think it's a good a good source of information. I want to present now again like a real example. Some indicators included in the BTR, in the first BTR of Guyana that was published early this year. And in this case, I'm just presenting you a subset of indicators. If you go to the BTR of Guyana, that you can download it from the UNFCCC website, then you will see that they present a large number of indicators that they will track according to the NDC. I think also you can see that for a single action they are defining in the case of energy they are defining 6 indicators. And well, then you can have your own thinking on how many indicators you need to include, and think that maybe you can get a bit enthusiastic on defining several indicators, but the key issue with indicators is having data to assess the indicators. No, so my recommendation will be not only look at a big number of indicators, but also check which data you will have available now and in the future. Indicators, but with no data, it doesn't look very nice actually in your future BTRs. Okay. What I wanted to show you to finish this presentation. I was checking it at the chat, and everybody is saying that I'm muted. I hope now you are listening to me well. But I wanted to show you the example of table 1, which is the table presenting the indicators. In the case of Tunisia, they presented 2 indicators. One indicator for the energy sector, one indicator with the total CO2 emissions for the energy sector, and for this indicator, they made a description, they defined from when they had the data and the relation to the NDC, and they defined a second indicator that is a more complex indicator, is an intensity indicator, considering not only emissions but also the units, or the economic units, by using the GDP as a part of the indicator. So they are considering these 2 indicators, one indicator based only in GHG emissions, and one indicator based on GHG emissions plus economic considerations. And for the table 2, which is the table to make a better characterization of the indicator, they included the definition of the baseline or the business as usual scenario, because the NDC of Tunisia include this situation. I know that several countries have included a commitment associated to a business as usual scenario. So it's good to use table 2 to explain how this baseline was prepared, and to check how can be compared appropriately with the indicator. This is what I wanted to present to you today, and if there are questions, happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Fernando. We have opportunity to see some concrete examples of the indicators from countries from the Guyana, Tunisia. Actually, the countries need to set their indicators based on their own targets. So as you said, the targets as are the starting point for definition of the NDC indicators. So thank you very much for this. And I'm sorry because there are some disruptions in my internet connection. So I hope that all was, visible to the participants. Now I would like to ask you kindly if you have some questions, raise your hands and ask Fernando. If not, also you can put the questions in the chat box. I don't see any for now.
There is one, Slayana,
Yeah.
on the difference between a common reporting format and common tabular format. Actually is common reporting tables and common tabular format. They sound very similar. I think probably they didn't think when they put the numbers, but the common tabular formats or CTF refer to the NDC tracking, whereas the common reporting tables, the CRT, refer to the inventory. So in the case of the common tabular format, we have 12 tables plus an appendix to fill, whereas in the common reporting tables of the inventory, we have 61 tables to fill for each year. Anyway, for both cases, the LULUCF the UNFCCC is preparing a reporting software that will allow to fill both sets of tables.
Thank you very much. I don't see more questions in the chat box, so we will continue with the presentation. Now, the CTF will speak about tracking progress in implementing and achieving using Table 4 and mitigation policies, measures, and actions and plans by using table CTF Table 5. So, Kechive, I'll stop here. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Slayana. Why I'm not able to share? Can you check? Can you check from my side? Sharing button is not active.
Just a second.
So basically, I'm going to continue the conversation from my colleague, Fernando, who has given a prelude in terms of the first few tables. I already see in the chart that participants are saying there are 12 tables, and this is confirmed by Fernando. Indeed, there are 12 tables. And because of time, we are not able to go through all these tables. We are just going to give an overview of the 5 tables, and we can continue this conversation later on with other tables, but I'll leave that to Slayana and Sheila to organize for the participants. So as Fernando has talked about the appendix, which is a description of the NDC. He also gave us an understanding of the description of indicators and why indicators are important. And also what I like that he actually went beyond this and gave us clarification also where we can get more information on indicators and sharing of the examples that he has done. So I'm going to focus the presentation now on Table 4, which is the most very important, I'm not going to say the most, very important table because Table 4, as you have seen in the context of the MPG, we are talking about the table that is really giving us a picture in terms of where we are in achieving the NDC, in terms of the numbers. So most of the targets that we have, you know, many countries would have actually put in the numbers and mentioned specific targets. I don't know where the interference is from. Specific targets, and table 4 basically give us the results of all the important elements that would have happened in identifying the indicators and then doing the accounting processes, and give us a picture of where we are in achieving the NDC. I'm going to show example of this table taken from the PACPA guidance on accounting for NDC. So this is the first table of table 4, and also to mention that table 4 basically may look very simple and also may look very complicated depending on the nature of the NDC and what is happening at a national level. So the first table I will show of table 4 with an example is showing this for the first BTR report, because the assumption is that some of the other elements will not have happened at national level. So we see here the indicator, very important, as already mentioned by Fernando, and the unit of the indicator as an example here, and the reference point. This 100 is giving us the megaton CO2 at the reference point. This could have been 2015 or 2020 reference point, where the starting point of the implementation of accounting of the NDC. And then subsequently, the next columns, it's actually account for the implementation year of the NDC. So you can have 2021 up to 2030. And here, as this example, as it is showing the first example of the first BTR, what will be important in table 4 for your first BTR is to actually mention then what this give us the emissions and your reference point, depending on your NDC, and then 2021, then what are the emissions in 2021, and then what are the emissions in 2022. As already mentioned, that the reporting year is 2022. So the other columns, 2023, 2024, are expected to be empty for the first BTR. And then you also have to highlight what is the target that you had. In this case, we had 80 megaton CO2 equivalent, and this is the target for 2030, and this is the percentage. So this is based on a business as usual scenario. So you see how these emissions are. And this next row is basically relevant if your target includes removals from LULUCF. So it would be the same, because then it's a complete economy-wide emissions in your country. And then you can account also accordingly what is the contribution of land use change and forestry in the whole picture. And what is important is to note that the next rows are actually speaking to in case the country is participating in cooperative approaches, then you have to provide the relevant information. And also the last row is actually reflecting when you are at the end of your NDC implementation. So this row is very relevant. So I will show you the next example, which actually include now a country which is engaged in cooperative approaches. And as you know that there is a guidance that is linked to the reporting in terms of understanding the reporting and the accounting that you are doing under Article 6. It's very important here to provide information on your corresponding adjustment, where you are now providing in terms of how much emissions or ITMOs you have been authorized to contribute to your NDC, or you have transferred to other countries. And this has to be subtracted accordingly, so that you avoid double counting as per the guidance. So this is a very important element, and it would require us to go into detail, a completely different webinar, but let's just appreciate now the table where it gives us this information. And it's very important for countries to take into consideration this as you are implementing your NDC. And I hope that many countries, I think, in already participating here already have this information to understand if they are going to engage in cooperative approaches and how they intend to do this. So this information will be important to report and should be reflected under Table 4 of the common reporting tables. So now in the next example is showing the same table. As I said, it can be simple, but it also can be complicated depending on what's happening at national level. This table now, what we have to take note, what is different from the other tables that I've shown you, I wanted to bring into your attention, is the last 2 rows, where now you are reflecting in terms of achieving your NDC. So this table has information, and it's very irrelevant to include this information in your BTR, which will be now at the end of the implementation period of your NDC. So for your first BTR, it's not relevant because you are just at the beginning of the implementation period of your NDC, but later on, because here you basically have to provide an assessment of whether you have achieved your NDC or you have not achieved your NDC. So firstly, by giving information in terms of where you started from, what were the emissions in the reference year, and what are the emissions now in the target year, which is 2020. And then you provide an assessment. Did you achieve the NDC? And you can mention, yes, you have achieved your NDC. For example, in this case of the example, so the NDC is achieved or is not achieved. There's 1 megaton missing. Anyway, then you can mention what, if you have achieved, and how was the level of achievement, and if you have not achieved, whatever information that you want to communicate to explain yourself there. And then the next important table, we already mentioned the mitigation policies, measures and actions that are important. And this is the table that is actually also showing progress in terms of each mitigation policy or plan or actions that you have. I want to clearly maybe just explain what this may mean. We know that in many countries they have the target, and then they explain how they will achieve this, and some are introducing policies that are promoting renewable energy, and some are introducing policies that are actually maybe incentive policies that are incentivizing action at different of technologies, or of replacing different technologies that are actually causing emissions. And then actions and measures are basically concrete activities or set of actions that you would have already identified that are going to support the implementation of your NDC. And then very important, if there are any mitigation co-benefits that may be resulting to the implementation of other activities. So very important, this I explained already in the first presentation. So you reflect this in a tabular format, and this is how the table looks like. So as explained earlier, that you must have the name of the action, the description, the objective. And here I have an example of how the table may look like. This information is based on information from Mauritius that is in their BUR. So if you can look closely, the first action we have is the improved fuel economy of vehicles. And the description there, as mentioned, is to improve fuel intensity in vehicles at the rate of 0.5% per year between 2022 and 2030. And this is objective is actually to improve technology, to make technological improvements for better fuel economies. And this is regulatory, and this is planned, and also it's happening in the transport sector. And these are the guests that are affected, and they started the implementation in 2021. And these are the institutions that are implementing this. And here they also have calculated how much emission they expect to reduce from this action. So very importantly, and again, this is another activity speaking to the mandatory energy labeling, and this is talking to regulated machinery, and which also include refrigerator, oven, and dishwasher. And the objective is to improve energy efficiency through the adoption of rescaled energy labels. And this is a regulation also, and it's been adopted by the government, and is targeting the energy sector and energy efficiency to be specific. And they started implementation in 2017. And this is how, as I mentioned, you use the flexibility. For example, in this case, if Mauritius doesn't have, or they may not have the capacity, or may not have calculated yet to understand the implementation of this action, how much is it expected to reduce emission, they may not include the figures here, or they can include the figures if they have the capacity and they've indeed calculated. And then they will have to explain what methodology they have used to come up with this figure. So the next action is talking to renewable energy roadmap of 2030 for the electricity sector, and explain, of course, what is the description. They want to develop renewable energy technologies and diversify the electricity mix. And their target based on the roadmap is to actually achieve 35% of electricity from renewable energy in 2025, and 40% by 2030. And this is also a regulation, has been adopted, and they started implementation in 2019, and so forth and so forth. So this is the purpose of the table. And as I mentioned earlier, that you can organize the information in this table per sector, that you will have all information for the energy sector, and then you can include information for waste, or whatever, or IPPU, whatever activities that you have. And I also want to mention that for this table, as you know, that you have to include those measures or policies that actually have a significant influence in your GHG emission. You don't have to include necessarily all your mitigation actions. You have to evaluate at national level which of these mitigation actions and policies that you have that have a significant influence in your GHG emission. And this will be, of course, be reflected and also be linked to your understanding of what is your GHG emission profile in these different sectors. And very important that you don't overburden yourself by small activities that really may not have a significant contribution to the overall target. So this is, I will end the presentation here in terms of giving you example of how table 4 and table 5 looks like, and what is the purpose of these two tables. These are very, very important tables. And over to you, Slachana.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting to hear about the information that countries need to provide in the context of the tracking progress in implementing and achieving the NDC, and what information is needed in that context of the CTF 4 and CTF 5, that's actually about the mitigation policies and measures. And thank you very much for that. Do we have some questions from the participants? Please feel free, raise your hand, or also you can put your questions in the chat box. We have a few more minutes to answer your question. yes, we know that the reporting NDC is one of the biggest challenges for all developing countries. So we understand your interest in this topic and also kind of the confusion. We saw here the questions about the tables, what tables are for inventory, what for the reporting NDC, etc., etc. There are some, for sure, more issues that you are would like to know specifically when it comes to the tracking and reporting of your NDC. So please feel free to ask your question. If I don't see questions in the chat box, so yeah, you can also go through these presentations that we will post on our climate transparency platform. So presentations as well as recording of this event will be posted at the platform, so you can go there and go through as your time allows you later on, and also you can ask questions later. So if there is no more questions, I would just share one more presentation, few questions, few short questions for you.
Sorry, Slanjana, I have a question. If the participants don't have questions, I think
okay.
What will be interesting for us is to understand where countries are in this process, which countries have started with NDC tracking, and what are the key challenges that countries are experiencing. And if they've already looked at the tables, because some of the tables are very good tables that they can use, for example, to collect data from different stakeholders, especially the coordinating entities. So it will be interesting to hear from countries to understand where they are in the process and what are the challenges that they are experiencing, or the successes. If they're not, we cannot only speak about challenges. What are the successes there?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ketsive. I know as a coordinator of the Eurasia network that countries are in different stages when it comes to their preparation of their BTR. Some countries already drafted the first document, and also including the NDC reporting. Some countries are just starting. So yes, as Ketsive says, it would be good to hear from you. In what stage are you now, and challenges that you are facing in the context of the NDC reporting? Yeah. Until the end, maybe I can present these Menti questions, and if you have some information in this regard, you can put in the chat box, or you can speak after the Menti presentation. Also, I will put the link in the chat box so you can answer the question directly from this link. And also, here is a presentation that I will share. Can you see my screen? I hope yes. Here is the first slide. The first slide is instructions. You can put in your search menti.com, so, and enter this code 67678776, and the application will start with the questions. I'll keep these instructions page few seconds more and then go on the next slide. Also, I put this link for the Menti questions in your chat box, so you can answer also by using that link directly in the application. Menti.com 67678776. So the first question is, what are the key takeaways from this webinar? Okay, the first question, information about the reporting tables. Yes, I know this is, examples showed by Fernando and Catsive. It's very important for us to see that examples, but also I really hope that we will have a time to make some exercises and actually workshops for you to practice filling out the reporting tables. So the next answer is overview of BTR. Yeah, reporting tables. Okay, I'll move. Yeah, summary of the BTR process, cleared lots of gap in knowledge in the context of the NDC. Great to hear. That's the purpose actually of the webinar. Yeah, the one answer says that each chapter has its national circumstances. That's new, something new that these participants learned. Targets and indicators, reporting tables and content. Also, you learned indicators should be derived from your NDC targets. You need to prepare NDC for reporting. And there is one more comment that is, it was a great summary of the BTR process, cleared lots of gap of knowledge. Let's go to the next question. What remains the main challenge for your country when it comes to tracking and reporting on NDC? So one respondent says that availability of data, capacity building for these new tasks. Yes, we understand that tracking and reporting NDC is really new task for developing countries. So that we are here to show you, to introduce you, to provide you with the examples and the exercises in order to raise capacities of the countries to report better on their NDC results. So some other challenges your countries are facing with are institutional arrangements. Some countries, yes, did not start with preparation of their BTR. Yeah, there is several or a quite number of the countries that did not start the preparation of their BTR. Also, what remains as a challenge for these countries, means of collecting and quantifying data related to implementation of the mitigation actions. Yeah, that's quite a challenge, and for most of the developing countries, data sources for reporting is quite issue. But I would say that related to your institutional arrangements, also legal framework that you establish prior to start any reporting, including NDC. One of the challenges is how to calculate GHG emission reduction for specific mitigation projects. One participant says that still familiarizing themselves with the updated NDC capacity and data availability. Thank you very much for your answers. We will pay attention on this in the context of our future work and support. So how satisfied are you with this webinar? We have 5 answers, please. Maybe more answers. I see here the more than 50 participants. Yeah, now 50 participants. Please respond to this. It's important for our future work and for our future improvement in the context of your needs and meeting your needs in the reporting and preparation of your BTR. Maybe. And the last question is, how can we improve this webinar? Yeah, you asked for more examples of actual BTR. Yes, as I know, maybe I'm wrong. I know that there are just 2 BTR officially submitted by now. Yes, but we will try to provide you next time with the more examples, a bit more time, more examples, more detailed info. Thank you. Overview of the reporting templates and tables. Also, time to call the webinar should be at enough time, like 5 days before. Yes, we shared invitation a lot in advance, I think even 15 days before. Presentation should be in proper size for people. Read the words on the table. Yes, maybe it's the font is not very adequate size for this presentation for the Teams format, but as I said and mentioned earlier, you will have all presentation at the CTF at our climate transparency platform, so you can go through the all presentation and all information after the webinar. Yeah, it was good webinar, and yeah, you need physical training. The webinar was very good. Yes, I just will mention here that we had already the physical training on-site workshop for the networks for Eurasia. It was in Almaty, Kazakhstan last year. But you know, the number of the participants was very limited, and on this way we see opportunity for more people, more your people participating in your country teams to attend to these webinars and to hear, to be engaged, to learn. So this is opportunity for more people to learn about the specific topic. So, but however, thank you very much. We know importance of the physical training. And at the end, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope it was useful for you. Thank you for your answers, and I'm not sure that I stopped the sharing. I have some issues with my internet connection today. Sorry for that. I would like to thank you, my colleagues, Katsive and Fernando, for providing a very comprehensive and good overview of the NDC reporting in the context of the MPGs and its provisions. And I hope that for all of you it was good information. We are aware that you need more support, specifically when it comes to filling out the tables, and we will do our best to organize more such events and provide you with maybe some exercises to practically fill out the tables and you know, see and learn on your own case with your own data on how to report on your NDC. At the end, I would like to thank you all for joining us, for showing interest, and really feel free to contact us anytime in this regard if you have any additional questions or concerns. in regard of the NDC tracking and reporting, please feel free to contact us. Thank you very much. Specifically, thank you both networks, Anglophone Africa and but also participants from Eurasia, and I really hope that we will see each other very soon at some next webinar.